Hello and welcome to another video by the Hoylett Computer Club. I'm Tom at the club. Today we're going to be talking about Docker. We're going to do a let's code or a let's do something. And we're going to be building a Dockerization of an application. So we're going to be building like a hello world application in JavaScript Express. And then we're going to be Dockerizing that into a node container and run it from there. So let's share screen and see what we're going to be doing. So our final result, once we're done, we'll have something like this where we can go to localhost at a certain port and have it literally give us back hello from Express Docker. So that's our end result. It's not very flashy, but it's a Dockerized application, and that's the goal of today. So I'm going to close that off, and we have this empty sort of space here to start working on building out an application. So the first part of the application is we're going to just build out a little simple Express application. So first we need to kind of utilize npm to initialize an application. I'm going to do -y so that it just answers yes to everything. Now you'll notice that we've got this package JSON file. So having this package JSON file means that we can utilize it as an application with installation of different modules and so on and so forth. So our next step is going to be making an entry point. Now, if I do a sort of look over this, the entry point here is index.js. So let's do that. Let's say touch index.js. So now we've made an index.js file. So this is going to be where our actual code of our server is. So for now, I'm just going to open up VS Code, utilizing this directory as the actual project folder. So if I close that, open up index.js, we've got this. Another thing that I would want to do here is I want to do, instead of a test thing, I want to do something like start. And whenever I start my application, I want that to be running node index.js. So we can test that working by literally putting anything in here like console.log working. Okay. Then we'll open a terminal and we'll test it. We'll go npm run and whatever script it is that we want to run, which is start. And it started. It says working. We've got that right at the bottom of the screen there. Working. Bring it up a little bit. So yeah, working. So that's a good sign. That means it's working, as in it's pulling that in. Another thing I want to do next is going to be, since we're going to be using Express, if we take a look in our package JSON, it's got scripts, but it's also got nothing else installed. It doesn't know that there's any dependencies here. So what we can do is we can do an npm I for install, and then say Express. And if you'll notice in a moment, it has dependencies now. It's got Express, which is perfect because that's exactly what we want, so that we can import this Express to be able to make an Express server. So our next step is going to be important. So I'll say const Express is equal to require Express. So this is going to import the whole Express file as Express, basically. So in this situation, Express is a class, and we can instantiate it with Express, like so. And we want to call that one an application or app. So we can say const app equals Express. Now this app is what we're going to be using. We're going to be using app.get, for instance, if we want to make a endpoint to be running a get request to. So we can say, let's say get / So whenever we hit the home page, we want it to run something. So we need a request object and a response object. And we need it to do something. So in this case, I'm going to do a response.send. So this will send it to whoever hit this endpoint. and I want to send some text. I'll send hello for now, just as an example. Then what we need to be listening on a certain port. So what I'm going to do up here is, just for completeness, I'm going to make const port equals 3232, just for the hell of it. You can put whatever you want, making up a port number, as long as you're not using that port on your machine. So now what I can do, I can say app.listen and give it a port. Okay, there's more to this, but let's just work it a little bit at a time. So now if I clear this, now if I do npm run start, it starts. It doesn't really give me much feedback. Now what I want to do is I want to go and open a web browser and go to localhost 3232. And we get our hello. Okay. So if I literally change that 3232 to 3230 and then run it again, and I refresh, it can't get it at 3232. So let's change that to 3230. So it's serving on a certain port. So what we could do is to let the people, whoever's reading this part, know what port it's on, we could say, let's make a little callback function. And all we want it to do is console.log listening on port and then port. Save that and let's restart our server. Notice now it says listening on port and gives us the port whatever it's listening on. So we know what sort of port do we want to go on to. We could do a few things here. We could actually put like a link to it so they could just click on it and stuff like that. But for now, this is fine. So instead of it saying just hello, what do we want it to say? We want it to say like hello from something, wasn't it? Hello. I'll just say hello from Express Docker. Let's save that. Let's restart our server. And let's go there again. Hello from Express. Looks a bit small, doesn't it? So what we can do is, since this is a HTML browser that it's reading it from, we can just insert some HTML like a H1 and surround our text with that. And let's restart the server. Listening on port 3230. And if we refresh this, we now have pretty much the desired effect here. We have our thing saying hello from Express Docker. How cool is that? But this is not necessarily that relevant. This is just here for us to be able to have an app so that we can actually Dockerize the app. So this is just really a quick hello world step just to get it sort of ready to Dockerize the thing. So now what we need what we call a Docker file. So it's capital D, Docker. And this has a certain set of things it needs. It needs basically an image to work from. So we need a from, some sort of image. We also want a working directory, a work there. What else do we want? We want to be able to copy some stuff. Not copy. Let's think what else. We want to run the installer, so run some stuff as well. Then we want to copy some more stuff. Then we want to think of an entry point. Well, actually, no, we want to expose some ports, don't we? So we're going to expose some ports. And then we want to run a command. Okay, so these are sort of parts of a Docker file for our purposes. From is describing which image we want to pull from as our default image, and then we're going to customize it by doing these other things. So now let's say I want my Node.js image, and I want, let's say, version 18. Okay, and let's say for my working directory, let's put it in the user, I don't know, user share. Do we want user share? User use a source, because it's going to be some source code, isn't it? And we'll say app for the application. So here's our current directory that we're going to be using on the actual image itself. Now we need to be copying our package lock and package JSON files over so that we can run the install. So what we can do is we can do copy package start to say package or package lock dot JSON. And we want to copy that over to the app folder. And the app folder is working directory. Working directory on the actual container is dot, as in app. So dot slash will say go into that directory and copy these files, being that one and that one. Then we need to run npm install, which will install all dependencies that are inside our package JSON. So npm install. Then we want to copy over any other files that we have in here. So we want to copy the current directory's content to the working directory's content. Again, we're going to have a little issue here because we've got these node modules, and that's going to be copying over the top of the node modules that are installed. In our case, it's fine because they're the same versions, but it's an extra step or an extra bunch of software that doesn't need to be copied over. So we'll deal with that in a moment. Let's expose the port. What port was it? It was 30 something. Let's have a look. It was 3230. So we need to expose 3230 to allow it. It's like almost like, imagine you've got a firewall blocking all ports. It's saying, hey, give me access to this port. Now the command is split up in like a list or an array of different sets of the command. First, we need the starting position. So npm, which is our first portion of the command. Then we did npm run start, didn't we? So we need to have a run, and then we need start. So that's separating our things instead of spaces. It's kind of made it into elements or items to actually run. So npm run start. So that's what it will do. Right. So that in essence is the actual Docker file to create some sort of a Docker image based on like a default image of Node.js version 18 and whatever we've installed or added to it. Now, there's this problem that I was talking about with the whole, if we're copying over, we're going to be copying over mass amount. Look at all this stuff. We're going to be copying that over. It's a bit redundant since it's already done an install. So what we can add is another file called oops. Sorry, that's trying to add a file inside node modules. We can add another file called .docker ignore. And this is telling it a bunch of things to ignore. Now, I just want it to ignore this folder so it doesn't copy it over. So we can say node underscore modules and save it. Now, that means that the Docker script here to copy everything will say copy everything, but ignore this. So it won't copy that. So now to build a Docker image, we use the Docker build command. So Docker build, we need to give it a name like a tag. So -t for tag, my express HCC. There we go. It doesn't really matter what it's called. It's just you need to have it as a name. Then we need to say, where is our Docker file? In our case, it's in the current directory, which means we can put a dot to say current directory. When I press enter, it's used node, it's set that working directory and set up all the stuff, and it's installed the files, and it's exposed the port. Well, it's done that quite quickly. And then it's set up the command to run. Okay. So now what we can do, instead of building it, we want to run it. So we can do a Docker run instead. So Docker run. We need to tell it what port we want the local machine to have access to and what it's connected to on the actual container. So what we want, I'm going to say port 3230:3230. Now that means local port on this machine is mapped to the port on the container. So we could have this as port 90 or port 75 or port 1235 4. It doesn't really matter on this one. This is just whatever we're going to hit, but then it's going to map to whatever is the actual exposed port on the Docker container. So that in essence is it. That will actually run. We won't be able to close it off though directly. So we'll have to do an interesting thing to do that, but that's fine. For now, let's just run it. Notice how now it says listening on 3230. It's ran, but now it's not actually running on this computer directly. It's running in this virtualized container, which is imagine being its own computer. And then it's kind of running on that, not on this computer. But the output's going to be the same. If I refresh this thing that's hitting that endpoint, it's still giving me that. If I change the thing to 3.4 there, it's going to go, it doesn't exist. Okay. If I then Control C, it's not going to stop. So here's where we have to do something different. We need a new terminal. And in this terminal, we need to do Docker PS to find out what processes are running on our Docker servers. In my case, I've got a lot of them. But if we take a look at the sort of the top one here, my express HCC, in this case, see this sort of bunch of sort of things here, this hex code here. That's the container ID. So we copy the container ID. Then we run docker stop and paste the container ID in. That will then stop this Docker server. We'll wait for a little while and it should return us the ID of the server that it's stopped. There we go. So if you take a look over here, it's actually stopped the server. Let's go over here. So the server's no longer running. It's just there. Now, if we want to run it again, instead of actually saying my local port is 3230 mapped to 3230, let's say that it's 3234 mapped to 3230. So let's change that to a 4. Now what's happening is it's still running on port 3230, but the thing is my local machine thinks that it's running on port 3234. So it will pass that port to the internal port of the machine. So we can kind of redirect what sort of ports we want to use, which is ideal because you may be using 3230 for something on your local machine. You may not want it to be that one. So you can just change it during your run. And basically that's it. We've created this Dockerized application. So hopefully you found that useful. There are other aspects to this, and we can kind of go over a lot of different things. We could like Dockerize Python application, you could Dockerize Ruby on Rails, you could Dockerize almost any application you like. So that's been me from the Computer Club. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.